Shalom. Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahweh Shai, Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahweh Shai, Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahweh Shai. All praise to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahak Kadosh. Salutation to the elders and apostles of GMS groups and ones alike, teaching 100% true. Shalom, Barakathon to them. And double honors to the elders and apostles of GMS groups and ones alike, teaching 100% true. Shalom, Barakathon to them. And give all praise and foremost to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakadish. Tonight's lesson is going to be about lack of wisdom or in understanding. It's a few verses. It talks about the wicked mostly. This is Jeremiah 4:22. For my people is foolish. They have not known me. They are Satish. They are Satish children. And they have no understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge. And Satish means foolish, pretty much. And that's the nation of Israel. They foolish, man. They're foolish in their ways. They're foolish and they're foolish in their ways as far as following their own direction and their own understanding. And most of all, to do evil, they're wise to do evil, but to do good, the things that they're supposed to do, they lack the understanding. The 3 S's relating to the wicked. This relates to the so-called blacks, Hispanic, Native Americans. The nation of Israel, they're simple, they're stiff-necked, and they're stubborn. That's the nation of Israel, all of the 3 S's. And this relates to the sorrow for a doomed nation. The doomed nation relates to the nation of Israel, the so-called blacks, Hispanic, Native Americans, ultimately for their disobedience and not continuously following what they're supposed to do, relating to the statutes and commandments and the laws that the Lord required them to follow. I'm going to put that with Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest unto me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget thy children. And basically, they refused to hearken and heed. They didn't take heed to when the prophets told them to come back in the ways of following the statutes and commandments as the Lord had commanded them. And because they didn't follow, the Lord had to punish them, and He allowed ultimately them to be punished by their oppressors, man. A vile base of nations that in the eyes of the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahshua are less than nothing. Relating to Isaiah 40:15 and 17. Pretty much the other nations are viewed, they're dropping the bucket, they're less than nothing. And that's how the Lord looks at them. But ultimately, because the Lord had to punish them, He allowed these other nations to rule over them as a punishment because of the nation of Israel's disobedience. Now that relates to Yahweh's charge against Israel. And that charge ultimately is against them not following their statutes and commandments and the laws that the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahshua ultimately commanded them to do. And the charge ultimately is going to be punishment for their disobedience for a time that's set for Yahweh Bashem Yahshua as accorded. And I'm going to read Jeremiah 30:7. Alas, for that a day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble. And that's where we're in. We're in the beginning curses of Jacob's trouble. Look what's happening relating to the so-called black, Hispanic, Native American, especially the tribe of Judah, which is the head tribe relating to the southern kingdom. They get in hell. You know what I mean? For example, police brutality and other things. We'll read that again. Alas, for the day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but ye shall be saved out of it. Number 8. For it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts. Hosts represents armies, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him. That relates to the spiritual captivity ultimately when Yahushua comes back to free the nation of Israel. Because right now they're under that spiritual captivity, you know what I mean, until Yahushua comes back to free them. That relates to that spiritual captivity or spiritual bondage. Number 9, but they shall serve the Lord their God and David their king, whom I will raise up with him. And that relates to going back, being redeemed and reconnected back to their power. Because right now, the marriage, that spiritual marriage relating to the nation of Israel and Yahweh Hashem Yahshua has been severed because of the nation of Israel's disobedience. So they have a chance to be regrafted back in once Yahweh breaks that spiritual yoke. And they'll be regrafted and redeemed back to their power. And that's what that talks about. But relating to Jeremiah 30:7, talks about Jacob's trouble. And that's what, these are the precursors of Jacob's trouble and the things to come. The persecution, race war, civil war, civil, class, and racial wars. That's all part of Jacob's trouble, and great persecution, great tribulation. This is just the beginning stages of what's really to come. I'm going to read some verses in 2nd Ezra 15:14 and 19. This is the Apocrypha. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. That's pretty much a warning to what's going to happen. For the sword in their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Those swords in their hands could be guns, knives, but ultimately it's the gun. That's the modern day sword. And that relates to, as I stated, it relates to civil, class, and racial wars, man, against nations of people, against other nations of people. That's what we're going to have. That's going to happen. Pretty much a civil war among all the other among nations against nations. 16. And there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another, and they shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the courses of their actions shall stand in their power. And that's what's happened all over the world, in various countries, France, Spain, Greece, here in America, you know what I mean, sedition. The people are rising up against the king and princes and taking the power in their hands against the kings and princes, relating to authorities, man. Relating to these protests, for example, is that even in other countries are protests relating to different things, relating to social, economical, and different various other things in their respective countries. Number 17, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. That's martial law. We had the precursors of that relating to medical martial law. Now we're going to get a full implementation of martial law where pretty much you're not going to be able to move freely from place to place like you are now. There's going to be a day where it's going to be a full implementation of martial law, where it's going to be checkpoints and pretty much full lockdown. This is number 18. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled. Because of their pride, their wickedness, even at the state and condition relating to these things coming upon the earth, many are going to still be wicked and prideful and not hearken and heed. So their cities are going to be in trouble. Their houses will be destroyed relating to home invasion. Men shall be afraid because of the things that's coming upon them, relating to all these calamities. Number 19. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword. That means with the gun. They're going to use the gun. They're going to invade. That's home invasion. Spoil their goods because of a lack of bread. That relates to famine. And this all relates to the Great Tribulation. Part of this incorporated with this is Jacob's trouble. And that's for the so-called blacks, Hispanic, Native Americans, and pretty much all the other nations combined. Now I'm going to read 2nd Ezra, and now those 4 verses, in a matter of speaking, that means vengeance upon the wicked. That's the 2/3. This is 2nd Ezra 15 and 37. And there shall be great fearfulness and trembling upon the earth, and they that see the wrath shall be afraid, and tremble shall come upon them. That relates to judgment of Babylon. Related to these plagues and pestilence, death and destruction. People going to be trembling. They're going to be in fear. They're going to be in awe. They're going to be scared. They're going to be in awe. They're going to have all different types of emotions relating to what's to come. 2 Ezra 15 and 49. I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood. Widowhood is basically a state of being spouseless, without a husband or a wife. That's what that is. And that relates to, because of warfare relating to bloodshed, death, and destruction. Both the husband they'll lose their wives, and both the wives will lose their husbands, because it's going to be World War III. That's going to happen. So it's going to be, and plus various things that's going to happen here in this country and various other countries. Now, the widowhood, that's what relates to that. Poverty, famine, the sword. I'm going to read it again. I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence. These are different types of scourges and plagues that's going to come upon relating to Babylon. And pestilence to waste thy houses with destruction and death. That relates to the judgment on Babylon and Asia. Specifically here, in this country and other various countries as set forth. This is 2 Ezra 16 and 18. The beginnings of sorrows and great mournings, the beginnings of famine and great death, the beginnings of wars, and power shall stand in fear. The beginnings of evils, what shall I do when these evils shall come? Now these are the beginning of different things that's going to happen. The beginnings of sorrows, great mourning. We in the stages now. This all relates to pretty much the birth pangs. The birth pangs and times of sorrow. We in the beginning, precursor stages of that. We are in the stages relating to sorrows. We in the great mournings, famines, death, relating to this COVID virus. Is a perfect example of that. This is just the beginning, and that's where we're in. Now the last part, what shall I do when these evils come? Hopefully you can avoid some of these. Hopefully you won't see some of these things come to pass among you individually and collectively. That's what you will pray for. Pray that grace and mercy will come upon you, where you don't have to see too much of these plagues come upon and deal with them. Now this is 2 Ezra 16 and 37 through 39. We'll read this. Behold, the plagues draw nigh, and they are not slack. So when these things come, they're going to come near, and they're not going to be slack. They're going to be full throttle. 38. And when a woman with child in the 9th month bringeth forth her son within 2 or 3 hours of her birth, great pain compass her womb, which pains when the child cometh forth, they slack not a moment. That relates to the birth pangs and times of sorrow. That's hypothetical, that's symbolic. And also put it twofold, relating to the son, relating to the judgment on the nations. Because when that pregnancy fulfilled, that pregnancy relates to what's ultimately going to manifest on the nations of people. That relates to how I shall execute in judgment on the nations, and specifically the wicked. So that's twofold. 39. Even so shall not the plagues be slack to come upon the earth. In the world shall mourn, and sorrow shall come upon it on every side. So these things are going to hit in all directions. They're inevitable. They can't be avoided. You might maneuver one, but you got to deal with the other one. You know what I mean? So these things are going to come to pass. You know what I mean? And that relates to, that's specifically talking about Yahweh's people must prepare for what's to come, relating to these different things. But ultimately, it's warning overall mankind what's to come. You know what I mean? But 1 Thessalonians 5:2-4. For when they say peace, then sudden destruction comes. Number verse 3. For many people are not going to take heed and hearken and heed to these, because they'll think they're in a safe place. And then sudden destruction comes. And that's the state we're coming back into. We're coming back to a somewhat semi-normal state, at least from the optics relating to, but behind unexpectedly, sir, another major event happens, because people are getting pre-comfortable getting back to somewhat a norm, which is actually, there's no more such thing as a normal, because that normal was passed a long time ago. When this COVID virus hit, that broke that normal, that broke that chain of normancy, man. That don't exist no more. So what we used to have before this COVID virus, it don't exist no more. It was already not normal anyway, even before the COVID virus. Things were starting to deteriorate and basically fall and collapse slowly. And like I said before in the video, we're not in a normal state. We forced to wear a mask. We forced to have 6 feet apart. That's far from normal. That's a form of conditioning. That's social conditioning. Ultimately, is acclimating and pre-preparing the people for what's really to come, relating to vaccinations, forced, and also ultimately that microchip. That's why they're warming people up. There's an agenda behind this. There's a hidden agenda behind this. Now this was just a few verses. Let me go down with some words. Compass means contrive to accomplish. Contrive means deliberately creating rather than arising naturally or spontaneous. So something that's purposely done. Created or arranged in a way that seems artificial, unrealistic. Basically, it's purposely done, forced, unnatural, and obviously not real. Example of that could be this COVID virus. Contrively orchestrated for ultimately to push a certain agenda what's to come. That's just hypothetics. That being said, I want to begin to end this. And before I end this, you got to question certain things, man. The deaths may be real, but the intent, the motive, intention is questionable. That's all I'm going to say on that. And that being said, I'm going to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rakadish. Salutation to the elders and apostles, GMS groups and ones alike, teaching 100% truth. Shalom, brakathum to them. I give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rakadish. The water, shalom. I hope it edified. The water, shalom, for listening. Thank you.